Today we take a look at Carnival by Dice Hate Me Games. This is a light game for 2 to 4 players where the players are trying to build the Carnival rides before the opponents do, but not really, because the theme is extremely abstract. You could be collecting ingredients for a recipe, components to build a robot. It could just be about sets of colors and numbers, and the game would be exactly the same. So you should not just buy this game because you're interested in the theme and you want to see how it is represented. The theme is really nice. It is really pleasant to have the illustrations on the cards, but this is pretty much all that you will see of the theme in this game. But this game still made me curious because it relies on a combination of dice game elements and of cards, and I'm always curious about original combinations or hybridizations of different elements in games, so I wanted to see how that worked in this game. I played the game and today I'm going to share my impressions with you. Each player starts the game with 5 base cards in his area. These cards represent the rides that the players will be trying to build. The phrase wheel, the bumper cards, the carousel, and so on. In the middle of the table you have a tableau indicating the actions that can be executed by rolling the dice. Each player receives 3 tickets at the beginning of the game, and players will be using cards from a main deck. This deck has a size that depends on the number of players that are playing the game, and it includes wild cards and cards that indicate specific rides and indicate components that are necessary to build that specific ride. There are 4 types of components: lights, materials, banners, and seats, and you need all 4 to build a certain ride. When you manage to put together the 4 necessary components for a ride, then you form a natural set. You flip that set face down. That ride is built and that set is locked. Nobody can touch it anymore. The other opponents cannot mess with the cards that are forming that set. They cannot use actions to target your cards there. Also, when you complete a natural set, if you have less than 3 tickets, you receive a new ticket. If you are completing a set by using a wild card, that set still counts as completed, but it is not turned face down, and the cards in that set can still be targeted by the actions of the opponents. Still, it counts as completed. And what the players are trying to do is to complete 4 out of the 5 available rides. The first player that accomplishes that is the winner. At the beginning of your turn, if you have more than 6 cards in your hand, you discard down to 6, and then you can perform one of 2 actions. You can discard a wild card together with any number of cards from your hand, and then you draw an equal number of cards, or you can roll the dice, match the results with the icons on the tableau, and then you perform the corresponding actions. You roll 3 dice, but then you have to choose 2 results that you match with the icons, and you ignore the 3rd result. The only exception is if you roll triples, then you place the 3rd die in that area and you resolve all 3 actions. Well, actually you resolve the same action 3 times, but this is the exception. Usually it is 2 dice and 2 actions. And the actions are to draw a card from the deck, to draw the card on top of the discard pile, to draw a random card from another player's hand, to draw a card from another player's hand, and then you give a card to that player, to take a card from the midway area of an opponent, and to then give a card that goes to the midway area of an opponent. The midway area is the area in front of you where you have the base cards and where you are placing the components that you need to build the rides. So basically here you're trading cards that have already been put on the table face up and that have already been committed to build the rides. And this is a good action, especially if in your hand you have a double of the card that you're going to give to the opponent, so that you get a new card and then you replace the one that you just gave away. So it is something that can help you, but does not necessarily damage the opponent, because the opponent will have in the end the same number of cards in his midway area. This action here, very powerful. You do take a card from the midway area of an opponent, but you do not give anything in return to the opponent. You discard a card that goes to the discard pile. So here you are improving your pool of components, and you're also damaging an opponent while doing so. Very powerful action. So there's going to be randomness in the type of actions that the players will be allowed to perform each turn. That can be mitigated somewhat by spending tickets, which are nevertheless a very limited resource. A ticket can be used to reroll the dice, to add or subtract 1 pip from a die, or to block any player's action. Next, you play cards from your hand to build your ride. To start building a new ride, you need to play 2 cards for that ride at the same time, like that. But then you can also add cards freely to rides that you already started building. It may be that a certain ride will have a single card attached to it because of actions that were performed in the previous phase. In that case, you are allowed to add cards to that ride freely. You do not have to follow the rules of at least 2 cards at the same time. That literally only applies when there are no cards attached to a base card. So you play as many cards as you want in this fashion. Then if you have less than 3 cards in your hand, you draw until you have 3. Your turn is over and the next player goes through the same procedure. And this is really how the game works. It is a very simple game. You discard cards or you roll dice and perform actions. You play cards to your midway area, and if you're the first player to complete 4 rides, you are the winner. This is a game that has a significant luck factor. Sure, you have the tickets that allow you to change things when you roll dice, but that works only so much because tickets are a limited resource. Overall, though, I also had to say that this game really has an unexpected level of confrontation. Yes, because many of the actions that you are performing will interact with other players' cards, and in many cases interacting here means hurting what the other player is doing. Yeah, there may be cases when you're stealing a card from a player's hand and that is a card that the player did not need, such as you're freeing up a slot in that player's hand, but in many other cases things will not be so hunky-dory and you will be hurting what the player is trying to do. This is... Daughter is awake. I'll be back. Okay, the daughter is asleep, but who knows for how long, so let's keep this quiet. I was talking about the confrontation level, the confrontation element in the game, which I could just call the stabbing element, because this is really what is happening here. You're ruining other players' strategies and what they achieved so that you can improve your position in the game. I talked briefly about the luck factor, and the luck factor in this game is pretty considerable. This is not a game that offers many options for you to work around what the game gives you. You roll poorly, you do not draw the right cards. On top of that, because you're not getting tickets, because you're not doing great, because of that you cannot defend yourself against the attacks of the opponents, and then you may find yourself stuck pretty easily. Of course, this is a quick game, so if the game is really not going very well for you, at least you're not sitting through the game for hours feeling miserable. In 20 minutes you will be playing another game of Carnival or just another game altogether. But this is a factor. This is a game that overall may even have moments of stagnation and a little bit of analysis paralysis. There may be times when you just have the wrong hand of cards and you have to just spend your turn discarding. Maybe you do not get anything interesting, then you have to wait for your turn to come around again, and that the players are taking their sweet time to decide what to do. It is not a huge thing, but again, in that 30-minute filler, do you really need that? I personally do not. In conclusion, this is a game that makes me feel sort of like middle of the way. It is not that I would prefer to be stampeded by wild elephants rather than playing this game again, but on the other hand, I did not fall in love with it. I did not feel captured by the design. It is a game that clearly can find a spot in many gamers' collection, gamers that are looking for a filler and they do not mind the randomness and the level of confrontation, but for my taste personally, and I don't want to damn it with faint praise, this is a game that is okay.